Hi, and welcome to the Divine Insight Show. Thank you so much for joining us wherever and whenever you're doing so. I know it's no accident that you're here. I'm thrilled to introduce you to this week's guest, Dr. Nima Rahmany, who is a chiropractor turned edutainer on a mission to teach business executives, entrepreneurs, and teenagers about how to dissolve the root cause of stress, among other things. And he's created a new breakthrough tool called the Overview Method, where participants are taken through an exercise to clear emotional baggage and resentment that holds them back from moving to new levels in all aspects of their lives. And he's here with me today to talk about it. Dr. Nima, thank you so much for joining me and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Travis. It's great to be here.
You're welcome. And you have such a rich and eclectic background. Can we talk for a minute about you, if you don't mind sharing a bit about how you got to where you are now?
Absolutely. Chiropractic is, I'm a chiropractor, it's in my blood. And what it is this deep desire to get to what I perceive to be the root cause of people's challenges. And so when they would come in with aches and pains that were manifesting physically, after about 10, 15 years, you realize that these physical manifestations are coming from emotional injuries. And so slowly, over time, I started giving myself permission to teach people about how to heal their emotional wounds so that they can then get access to healing themselves physically. And so I just did a session, for example, I just did a session on somebody today. I developed a methodology to help heal our attachment wounds, our old emotional injuries from the past. However they manifest in today, they get triggered in today, you can have an access through that trigger and move it into the past. And I saw this woman who has been dealing with Crohn's disease, and we went into a moment where she was being triggered at work, feeling with her partner, with her partner feeling undeserving, feeling her guilt and undeserving. And I asked her, I said, where do you feel that in your body? And she put it right over her stomach, her digestive system, which she's like, there's an emotional component to where my Crohn's disease has been. And then of course we went back and discovered that it has to do with her 13-year-old self, who was kind of caught into some sort of an event that was very traumatic for her when she was with her mother. And that feeling of I'm not deserving, that guilt and undeservingness was imprinted into her body, into the implicit memories of her body. And without healing those old unresolved griefs, those old unresolved traumas, they kind of develop and they get stuck energy in our body and develop into illness. And so I just gave myself permission to go upstream, and now I lead a global community of self-healers who teach, who are learning how to interpret the messages inside of them and join themselves rather than self-abandon, and then lead themselves into creating of relationships, secure attachments, connection to purpose, emotionally regulate, and deeper intimacy in their lives when you go inside. So that's what I teach now.
You know, that's really beautiful. And what we can appreciate about what we're learning more, and science is starting to show more about how this operates within us, is the connection between our conscious thought and the physiology of our body, particularly around trauma and the long-term effects of that. And many people in the sort of more intuitive world and the energy medicine world understand that, you know, chiropractors and massage therapists, those who do sort of more manual, visceral manipulation, understand that you can make an adjustment one time and that might help for that moment, but then it doesn't help the sort of supporting belief system or trauma. And that's why I so appreciate learning more about that work that you do. And what was the initial inspiration for this method that you developed called the Overview Experience?
The initial inspiration was being bullied in school and having low self-esteem and experiencing a lot of anxiety. I was always trying to find the root cause of my anxiety, which led me, while I was in chiropractic, down a path of an understanding that started with me, cognitively changing the stories. Did the whole landmark thing, John DeMartini's work, and Byron Katie, which is all about examining the beliefs and changing the beliefs. And then I discovered that, when you get triggered, there is no cognitive conscious awakening or awareness in that moment. You are now run by the old complexes of your body. And those traumas are very much in the body, and no amount of therapy or intellectualizing is going to solve it. And so it led me down a path into somatic work, inner child work, and I've integrated that into my methodology, which is a cognitive-based and body-based tool and method that helps heal our emotional injuries from the past and unresolved attachment traumas from parents.
Very cool. So let's talk about stress. As we understand, there's been studies around stress, the effect that stress has on the body, and there's some understanding, even scientifically, that there's things called good stress, an amount of stress which is performance enhancing, allows greater focus, perhaps motivation and things like that. But again, there's this additional unnecessary, too much stress. So let's talk about the stress from your perspective and what you found to be the root cause of the stress that is harmful to our systems and our bodies.
Yeah, absolutely. There is two types of stress. There's distress, which is what you just talked about, the one that's harmful to your body. Distress is when I'm met with something in front of me that I'm perceiving as in my way. Okay, so this argument with, let me give you an example. Today I was just on a call with a client who his vision and his business is all about scaling, helping his customers scale their business by kind of systematizing things and setting up programs that allow the owner of the company to kind of step back, right? And so that's scaling. He helps them with scale. Well, guess what he's now confronted by in his business? He's now just hired someone. He does the programming. He's just hired somebody to do the marketing and the customer service. And he's now confronted by the fact that, oh, geez, he's got to train this new guy and systematize and it's basically to systematize the work and delegate to him. So guess what?
Right.
He's now comes and he's like, I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed. He feels distress because he perceives that problem in front of him is in his way. I got to hire this guy. I got to train him and do work that I'm not getting paid for. It's taking me extra time and it's frustrating me. He feels a sense of distress. In other words, what's in front of me is in my way. It's just based on a perception. Using the overview method, we are able to go in and shift that whole story, not just cognitively, but in his body, to align with his mission, which is I help customers and businesses scale their businesses and to give more freedom to the entrepreneur. And lo and behold, just with the flip of a switch, this thing that's in the middle, in his way, is now actually on the way. This challenge is no longer something that, oh, it's distressing. It's like, oh, I'm actually confronted by this because I'm now having to document the changes and do and become what I'm teaching. I'm literally being forced to become what I'm teaching others how to do.
And it's somewhat ironic to hear that story of someone who's created the vision for their business to help people scale. And one of the first things that they come into facing is their own inability
we teach what we most need to learn. You know that, Travis. We teach what we most need to learn. That's why it's so meaningful to us to teach these things, because we struggled with it at certain times, right? Same with your intuitive kind of work that you do. Sorry, there's a campfire going on right in front of me.
That's all right.
Nothing.
That's all right. It's very exciting. Good. I just hope you're not in Northern California.
Yeah. No, we're good. We're good. So essentially, the good type of stress is when you perceive it as it's on the way. And the moment that I can shift the thing that's in the way and I can now see it as on the way, the distress now turns to what's called eustress. That's the positive stress. That's actually enlivening. It's firing your parasympathetic nervous system, which is in your ventral state of your your vagus nerve, and that actually breeds health. It breeds energy. It breeds kind of like this fire and this purpose and this spark. And I truly believe that we're stressed because we have the wrong kind of stress. We wait for life to be easy, and then we get confronted with these challenges. But if we take on challenges that are meaningful to us, we're putting eustress into our schedule, and that's when we start to thrive. It sharpens our axe. You know, I'm deliberately putting stressful things, like I have an event coming up this weekend. It's stressful, but what it's doing is it's causing me to make choices so that I can become in alignment with the kind of person that's going to just really deliver an amazing experience for my attendees. So the secret is to choose challenges that inspire you. Otherwise, you attract distressing challenges that despire you. So put in eustress in your schedule that challenge you. Start a new course. You know, take a new course. Start a challenge for you, and you're now putting eustress into your path. And that's when you start to get stronger. You start to heal. You start to transform.
Beautiful. And what I love about your work as well is that I understand that your method helps people to identify thoughts that would be considered more balanced and authentic, which is distinct from the modalities that many people have used for years around sort of positive thinking methods. Whether people believe it or not, the whole concept of trying to find like a better feeling thought using the idea around Abraham Hicks or other things, like it might even be denying the reality of what they truly believe by focusing on just a positive thought.
You're
So,
talking about spiritual bypassing.
right, or just like denial, just of what we're actually experiencing, and saying, you know, positive vibes only, it might be denying the reality of being in a low experience and needing to actually process that versus ignore it. So that's what I love about hearing what you do. Could you elaborate a bit more about how you help folks identify what you consider to be a more balanced or authentic
Yeah,
thought?
I just got off a call with a client right now. We do group calls, and healing happens in transformation. And a lot of times I'm leading the group, my community, into exercises where we get connected with what's going on in the body in that moment. And yesterday when we did the exercise, this woman, she got into her body, and I was kind of helping we were doing shadow work, what I call dancing with the dark passenger.
Mhm.
And we were just identifying, I feel unworthy, I feel not good enough. And so we were identifying that. And what she discovered was that she was like, well, I don't have any of that. I'm actually doing quite well. And she heard and saw on the Zoom call other people talking about how they were feeling shitty and all this stuff. And she was like, she was basically saying things like, well, I didn't have any of that. So I just held back I held back saying anything because I felt good, and I didn't want other people
Awesome.
to think that, you know, to feel bad, right, about that. I didn't want to put other people in a situation. And that is a classic example of bypassing, inauthentic bypassing. And we are living in a world where, you know, this is what she had what her big challenge was when we first started, was she's wearing a mask, all this smile and positivity, and deep down inside she was crumbling, and her marriage wasn't working. She had gained, you know, she was weighed over 300 pounds. And so she's just working on becoming more real and true to herself. And she's like, what do I do? Like, what do I do? Like, do I you know, I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to be negative. I didn't have
Mm.
because I didn't want to be positive. I wanted to like fit in and all that stuff. And it's like, what is it? What is the method? What do we do? The method is just to share what was actually true. And instead of trying to be positive, I'd rather have you be like, hey, you know what? I got into my body and I realized I was feeling pretty good, but then I started judging myself for it. Maybe I'm not doing it right. And then I just
Mm.
held back, or I was thinking about making up something that I'm not happy about just so that I can
Mm.
kind of fit in, but then I didn't. So I decided that'd be inauthentic. So I stayed silent.
Right. Became
If
invisible.
she, if she were to just share that, that truth is far more profound than her pretending to try to be happy and positive. And us hiding from that truth in service of pleasing other people is the underlying kind of foundational behavior of codependency, which causes us to abandon ourselves and is a major attractor of chronic health problems. So when you try to put on this fake positive happy-go-lucky persona, I started noticing this trait in my patients, that the people who were doing that the most, spiritual bypassing, being the one side, pretending to be just happy, positive, whatever, were attracting the most chronic health issues. It's
Mm.
almost as if their body was saying, enough of the bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
Choose me instead of abandoning me like you did as a child. And so this goes back to healing those attachment wounds. And as we're working on it, her challenge that I'm putting is to share what's actually true rather than what she thinks it's supposed to be. And that's an exercise that's breaking her codependency with, her childhood kind of primary attachments, which now has led to her marriage being the way it is. And so it's work in progress, and it's us choosing moment to moment our authenticity versus approval in every
Right.
moment. In every moment. And positivity is trying to choose approval versus authenticity, which is our true nature, what's true, what's happening in the moment. We're literally choosing, we're at a fork in the road in every moment. And so once you've abandoned yourself enough, and you go down this road and you're like, I'm lost. You're like, okay, how do I find myself? Well, we got to go back into the body and then speak up what's true in every moment, even though it's scary, even though it's not a path that's through the forest that's been cleared for us. It's like taking the machete and then hacking it through and then choosing what's true for us in every moment. And that's terrifying. That's why so few people have done it. I just love guiding people to find that for themselves. There's a
Yeah.
link between that and health.
Right. Yeah. I think it's a beautiful example of the power of the work that you're doing. And it makes me think as well, the people that, the damage that can be caused by the illusion of okayness and not accepting that not being okay is okay. It's transitory, but when we're not looking at it, we're diverting ourselves from it. It'll come out anyway. We talk about that with, like you're saying, the shadow work and how important it is to understand all aspects of our personality. And when we hide aspects that aren't going well from ourselves, it'll come out in some way in our behavior or whatever. So I think it's so powerful. And I'm curious around how people can use your method to identify their true path towards happiness and success, whatever that might look like for them.
Well, the first thing that I would recommend they do is don't make happiness and success your goal. That's the first way of failure. Oh, happiness and success is I'm going to read you a quote because it's important to me. I'm going to read you a quote from Viktor Frankl. Have you heard of him?
Yeah, I have. The name rings a bell for sure.
Okay. All right. Don't aim at success. The more you aim at it and make it a target, the more you're going to miss it. For success, like happiness, cannot be pursued. It must ensue, and it only does so as the unintended side effect of one's personal dedication to a cause greater than oneself, or as the byproduct of one's surrender to a person other than oneself. Happiness must happen, and the same holds for success. You have to let it happen by not caring about it. So
Mm,
that's the first thing that I would say.
right. Don't
Just
go
give
for it.
up, on the idea of happiness and success. All right. I changed the words to achievement and fulfillment. So
Mm,
what is it that you like? Happiness and success, if you make that your goal, oh, you're screwed, because you never get there. Because in every moment you're going to, and there's a duality, there's something else. As soon as I achieve this, then I'm now reached to the horizon effect. It's like, now I got, I'm never going to reach that sun. It's always going to elude me if that's
mm-hmm,
my goal. Now,
right.
what I do with my clients is the very first thing we do is we create a mission statement for you. You identify what your values are. Here's the steps that you do. Identify what your values are. I have value determining questionnaire that I give to all my clients that expose what's true for them, what their life actually demonstrates, not what they think they should be doing. That's the first step. You create a mission statement of what you'd love to be, do, and have in all of those areas of life in alignment with those values. That's the first step, because most of the time we set goals and do things that are not congruent with what our true values are, and that's a surefire way to misery, because you'll
Right.
never get there. It's never going to be an authentic, powerful life. The next step that you go through after you do that is what we do with our clients, we then see, without doing that first part, you haven't created a roadmap that's truly yours. So you don't know what
Right.
fulfillment actually is. You're living somebody else's life, parents' life, or whoever. After you've done that, we then make a list of all of your resentments and regrets along the path that are stuck in your body. The breakups that you've had, the wounds that you're still carrying around, the grief that you're carrying around. And then that's when I apply the overview method on healing those griefs and those attachments by going into the body and healing those younger parts of us that we forgot, those parts of us that we abandoned during those wounds and emotional injuries. Those cause us to fragment and dissociate from ourselves and adopt other people's points of view. And our work then to find what that our purpose and our vision is that brings us our achievements and fulfillments that are coming from within happen on the other side of healing those attachment wounds. Unless you do, without doing that, you're unconsciously being driven by these complexes and these pains to try to look good, to try to appease mom and dad, to try to fit in, to try to look, a certain way. It's based on external things.
Right.
Without healing those attachment wounds, it's always going to be based on external. But once you do and you get that right, you then start to define your life on your own terms. You start to be able to set boundaries and say no. And you start to be able to take steps towards the fulfillment and actualization of a life that's congruent with who you really are, rather than what you think has been expected of you. In which case, when you do and you get successful, you're like, what the fuck? I did everything that I should, and I'm
Right.
still miserable. So fulfillment and achievement come from knowing what your values are, living according to them, setting your day, your life, your schedule in the fulfillment of honoring those gifts that are exposed to you once you heal those attachment wounds.
Right.
And you
Beautiful.
offer those gifts from the place of service, from a place of love, because it completes something very, very meaningful to you. And so now I'm living a life of meaning rather than seeking happiness and success. So it's like, let's say you're a client of mine and my number one goal is happiness and success. You'd be able to feel that. But if my goal is, all right, I want to take Travis and I want to really find what's been like that core wound that's been stopping him. And I'm really dedicated to helping him reconnect with the parts of him that were disconnected from those early traumas, so that he can then he can be guided back to his own heart, where then I say, Travis, what is it that you'd love to do? And then you'll be like, oh, this is what I want. Great. And my fulfillment comes from guiding you to that, because I'm fully engaged with my own wounds and cognizant of the pain that got me to the point where I really want to guide you there, and the fulfillment of knowing that I got to be a safe witness for you on that path. So that's as good as it gets for me.
Yeah. It's really
And
beautiful.
and what the holy grail is, when you really do the work, you then are open to creating a safe, you become like a container where you're able to create a safe, secure relationship that's not based on codependency, that's based on mutuality, where you have you know, your counterpart, where you have a space to heal and evolve together. That's really, I think that's kind of like the holy grail.
Yeah, and be more interdependent than codependent. That's really
100%.
beautiful. Thank you. And is there anything else that you'd like to share about your work, and kind of share how folks can find you and get information about your work and connect with you?
Yeah, I can leave you a link. The overview experience is the first place to start. I do a workshop. It's a 5-hour, 6-hour workshop that kind of guides people back into asking the right questions, a cognitive and a somatic based approach to healing those attachment wounds. I would say the best thing is just to just jump all in and just start working on it and finding that. I mean, I'll give you my the link for it right there. If you can leave it in the show notes, I'm just going to leave that for you in the chat box here. You can pass it
Yeah, we'll
along.
do for sure.
And then my Facebook group is called Trigger Proof. Um, and you just add yourself, you know, Facebook group Trigger Proof is regulate stress and strengthen immunity during a crisis. And then my website is right there as well, drnima.com. I'm just, if you can grab those links and then put them in your
Yeah.
show notes right now. That's a really easy way of getting a hold of me. Send me a message. Let me know what landed for you on this, where you would like to be in the next 6 months, what's been stopping you. And, you know, we just discover to see if, you know, if it's a fit for you to, if you're wanting support. It's really important. Gosh, I didn't get to where I am without getting support. A podcast is great. Books are great, but there's something very powerful in having somebody hold your feet to the fire and
Mhm.
challenge you to have these difficult conversations rather than just be kind of bypassing and going into the woods and isolating and in these little retreats where you isolate yourself from others. The work is done in real time, where you're able to show up and be able to manage your own triggers when you're with family, and to be able to reparent the wounded inner child within you and really get to a place of becoming a functional adult. That doesn't happen with just a podcast. It doesn't
Right.
happen with a book, and we do need guidance and support. And so I love guiding people who are ready to, you know, take full responsibility and say, hey, look, these traumas didn't start with me. It's not it's not my fault. Um, it's not my fault that these horrible things happened. But I am willing to now, I'm ready to take responsibility for it and heal that. So it's not fault, but responsibility. And I love working with those people.
You know, and I really appreciate that, because also one of the things we can tend to do is to not necessarily consciously avoid accountability, but sort of unconsciously not necessarily know how to create some level of accountability, and working with other people at some level certainly helps to do that as
Yeah.
well. And
It's
like you
okay to
said,
ask for help.
yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and joining us on the show today, sharing your wisdom and insight with us today. So thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you so much, Travis.
And thank you all for watching and listening. Really appreciate your time, and have a terrific day.